As we enter the national season of 2004, arguably the biggest shakeup in the history of early Yu-Gi-Oh! Occurred with the release of Invasion of Chaos in March 2004. This one set would introduce Chaos monsters, and with them the entire landscape of the meta in terms of deck building choices and power level would be changed overnight, as we enter the first Tier 0 format in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. I'm the Law Yugioh, this is Retro Retrospective, and today we rewind to June of 2004 to the US National Championships and Chaos format.
Psst, hey, real quick, did you know that only about 20% of people who watch my content are subscribed? If you like what you see, leave a like, comment, and subscribe below. Thanks, it really does help a lot.
Within the first half of 2004, the landscape of the game was forever changed with the release of Invasion of Chaos in March 2004, specifically in the releases of two monsters, being Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, and Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End. It is no hyperbole or exaggeration to say that the release of these two cards completely changed how Yu-Gi-Oh! Was played simply due to the power level. For context, both of their stats matched that of Blue Eyes, who was the strongest main deck monster in the game at the time, and even he required either two tributes or some form of setup combo to reach the field. These two, however, simply required banishing a light and a dark monster from the graveyard to special summon themselves from hand, and on top of that extremely simple requirement, had extraordinarily powerful effects. Blackluster Soldier was a bit of a Swiss Army knife of targeted monster removal, either able to banish a monster for the cost of attacking that turn, or could attack twice if it destroyed a monster in battle, able to either banish a threat or remove two threats for potentially massive damage. Chaos Emperor Dragon, on the other hand, was a blanket nuke, sending all cards from both players' fields and hands to the graveyard and burning the opponent for each card sent, reducing the game state entirely down to a top deck war. This could be further complicated by the presence of either Sangan or Witch on the field when this effect resolved, allowing the player to search for Yatagarasu once the field and hands are cleared. Then, if they haven't yet that turn, normal summon it and proceed to Yata lock the opponent out of the game by preventing them from drawing ever again. These two cards would form the basis of what became known as Chaos Control, which was similar in concept to the previous hand control variants of the older formats, choosing to slot in additional lights to the already heavily dark attributed deck to facilitate the summoning of these colossal titans. Although these two were absolutely the headlining cards, the Chaos Duo, as they would be known, were not the only major cards released here, and were also not the only Chaos monsters. Chaos Sorcerer was essentially a weaker version of Blackluster Soldier, with lower attack and defense and only had the ability to banish face-up monsters with no extra attacking effect. He was clearly weaker, but with the eventual hits to the Chaos Duo on the ban list, he would see play in lieu of additional Chaos Duo copies. Dark Magician of Chaos was the last Chaos monster, and he was a bit of an outlier in the small series, not having a special summon requirement of his own, but recovering a spell from grave when summoned, banishing any card it destroyed in battle. While not popular in this particular format, Dark Magician of Chaos would eventually have its own time in the sun thanks to the nature of its recyclability being extremely powerful, just not as powerful as the Chaos Duo. In addition to the Chaos monsters, many useful pieces for the meta and future metas would be released here too. Death Kangaroo was a good set target that destroyed anything that attacked it with lower attack than its defense, being decent for removing certain attacking threats. Strike Ninja had the ability to banish two Darks Engraved to banish itself for a turn, which was used in early variations of the Chaos strategies. Berserk Gorilla was easily the most usable of the 2000 plus attack normal summons in the game, requiring that it must attack each turn if able and is destroyed if it was ever put into face-up defense. Freed the Brave Wanderer was mostly used as a decent powerful light target for the Chaos strategy, though his effect could be used to remove threats in a pinch. Granmaju Daiza gains attack and defense for every banished card in the game, which would not be good now, but would pop up from time to time in later formats as a rogue deck focus. Manticore of Darkness would be decently popular alongside the previously released Card of Safe Return, as you could loop itself with another copy of itself to proc Safe Return repeatedly to draw Exodia the Forbidden One, being another FTK strategy in the format. Stealthbird was another option added to the Pac-Man strategy, providing burn damage when flip summoned and able to flip itself face down every turn. Ryukoki was powerful in that it was a high attack zombie with 2000 defense, making it a target to summon with Pyramid Turtle, but it also had the added benefit of destroying any spellcaster or warrior it battled, such as Blackluster Soldier. Wild Nature's release was a spell that would be used in beast down strategies from time to time, specifically to take advantage of the high attack stats of Berserk Gorilla. Reload was essentially a spell that let you mulligan your hand, shuffling it back in and drawing the same number of cards, which was used in FTK decks to help find their pieces faster. Smashing Ground was the inverse of Fissure, destroying the highest defense monster the opponent controlled rather than the lowest attack, becoming staple almost immediately. Dimension Fusion, for the cost of 2,000 life points, let both players summon as many banished monsters as possible, which became a win condition for some decks in later formats. Curseal of the Forbidden Spell was similar to Magic Jammer, but it locked that spell from being activated for the rest of the game, which was not super popular at the time, but would eventually be considered a side deck choice in various later formats. Chain Disappearance banished a monster with 1,000 or less attack and all other copies from the opponent's hand and deck, once again being relegated as a side deck option. Compulsory Evacuation Device returned a monster from field to hand, becoming another powerful option in terms of monster removal in the format. Lastly, for IOC, Self-Destruct Button could, when the difference between yours and your opponent's life points is 7,000 or greater, end the game in a draw, which would be a problematic card for the tournament scene simply due to prolonging games that shouldn't be prolonged. There was another set released in this time frame, being Ancient Sanctuary in June 2004, but this set would bring very little to the game outside of a couple select cards that would impact the meta of the time due to the power of the previous Chaos monsters. The Agent of Creation Venus was an interesting piece, able to special summon up to 3 mystical shine balls from the hand or deck by paying increments of 500 life points, which would be experimented with, but ultimately be discarded due to the lack of powerhouses to leverage them with. Legendary Jiu-Jitsu Master was yet another good set target, able to place a monster that failed to destroy it back on top of the deck. Zaborg the Thunder Monarch was the first of many Monarch threats in the next few sets, able to destroy a monster on field when tribute summoned. Protector of the Sanctuary locked the opponent from drawing outside of their draw phase, preventing the use of cards like Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. Emissary of the Afterlife was similar to Sangan and Witch, specifically adding a level 3 or lower normal monster to hand, which was almost exclusively used to search pieces of Exodia. Night Assailant could destroy a monster when flipped, or add a flip monster from grave to hand when discarded, which could include another copy of Night Assailant at the time, forming a resource loop. King of the Swamp was a fusion substitute monster that could be discarded to search for a polymerization, which was not useful in its time but eventually found play. Enemy Controller could either swap the battle position of an opponent's monster or take control of it until the end of the turn for the cost of a tribute, being useful for its nature as a quick play spell. Monster Gate was similar to the previously released Reasoning, requiring a tribute but giving no point for the opponent to call a level, instead always summoning the monster from the top of the deck. Level Limit Area B operated similarly to Gravity Bind in that it restricted players from attacking with level 4 and higher, just swapping them to defense mode instead of simply restricting attacks. Lastly, Wall of Revealing Light was a trap that let you pay life points in increments of 1,000 to block attacks from that attack value or lower, which was mostly used to pay almost all of your life points to then trigger cards like Last Turn and Self-Destruct Button. With all of these releases, the ban list would have to be updated to accommodate, but interestingly enough, only a couple of cards would be hit. Blackluster Soldier and Chaos Emperor Dragon would unsurprisingly be limited here, but the only other hit compared to the last format was the Manticore of Darkness, being semi-limited to help curb the popularity of the Manticore Exodia FTK, which it would be curbed almost entirely as people would simply pivot back onto Magical Scientist FTK, which was more consistent at this point. Without question, the best deck in the format is Chaos Control, and I truly don't believe that that is up for debate. There is a reason this format is considered to be the first true Tier 0 format in the game's history, although there was another deck that could put up results, though extremely inconsistently. Magical Scientist FTK, as previously mentioned, was actually more powerful here than in previous formats thanks to the introduction of Monster Gate, which could get out one of your 2 FTK pieces while also making Last Will live. Because of this, the few people who choose not to play Chaos in Chaos format are standardly on this FTK because of its ability to end a game faster than Chaos. But again, it is not nearly as consistent as Chaos, which is why it has not performed well over the format's exploration. Here are some historic Chaos lists to get you started, with Fristo de Boer and Tom Calvarez's lists from Battle City Amsterdam, and Theorizak's US Nationals winning list from 2004, as there really isn't that much play of this particular format in the retro play sense. Chaos format warped the history of this game forever, which would only become more apparent in the coming months. The releases of Chaos format would make the issues with having the highest format of restriction being limited become apparent, and this would change by the next Legacy format, with the introduction of one of the most important fixtures in the game's history, the Forbidden and Limited List.